Quick question. How do you know when milk's gone bad? You don't check a label, you don't run a test, you just smell it, make a face, and immediately know. Now imagine doing that with zero fridges, zero expiration dates, and zero idea that bacteria even exist. That was just Tuesday for most of human history. So how did nobody accidentally poison an entire village on a regular basis? Let's actually get into it. Start with the obvious tool everyone already owns, your nose. Psychologist Paul Rozin has spent decades studying disgust, and one of his core findings is that humans are almost universally repulsed by the same handful of smells, especially the ones linked to bacterial decay. That reaction isn't learned from a textbook. Babies who've never eaten solid food still scrunch their face at rotten smells. It's wired in, deep, before you even have the words to describe why. Here's the clever part though. Spoilage bacteria produce specific compounds as they break food down. Things with names like putrescine and cadaverine. Charming, right? Your nose can detect these at absurdly low concentrations, way before the food would actually make you sick. Basically, evolution gave you an early warning system that goes off before the real danger even arrives. So smell was step one. But it wasn't the only line of defense. Texture mattered just as much. Sliminess, unusual softness, a weird stickiness, all of these are physical cues your ancestors relied on constantly and honestly still rely on today whether they realize it or not. And color, obviously. Green fuzz appearing on bread wasn't a mystery. Nobody needed a microbiology degree to go, yeah, we're not eating that. But here's where it gets more interesting than just sniff and hope. Ancient humans didn't just detect spoilage. They got aggressive about preventing it in the first place. Salting is probably one of the oldest tricks in the book. Salt pulls water out of food through osmosis, and bacteria need that water to survive and multiply. No water, no bacteria, no spoilage. Simple, brutal, effective. Smoking did something similar, drying food out while also coating it in compounds that happened to be antimicrobial. Ancient people obviously didn't know the chemistry. They just knew smoked meat lasted, and fresh meat didn't. Then there's fermentation, which honestly might be the most clever trick humans ever stumbled into completely by accident. Cultures across the entire planet independently figured out that letting the right bacteria take over food first could actually protect it from the wrong bacteria. Sauerkraut in Europe, kimchi in Korea, garum, a fermented fish sauce in ancient Rome, so popular it was basically the ketchup of the empire. Garum was made by packing fish, salt, and herbs into containers and letting them sit in the sun for months, breaking down into a pungent liquid that Romans put on almost everything. To modern noses, the smell alone would probably clear a room. To ancient Romans, it was a staple condiment produced at an industrial scale, shipped across the entire empire in sealed jars. Cheese, essentially everywhere dairy existed. None of these cultures were coordinating with each other. It wasn't just about additives either. Ancient humans got surprisingly good at controlling temperature long before electricity existed. Root cellars, dug into the ground below the frost line, kept food naturally cool using nothing but dirt and basic physics. Simple, but it worked well enough to become standard practice across countless cultures for thousands of years. And in ancient Persia, engineers took this even further, building structures called yakhchals, tall dome towers that could store ice and even make it in the middle of the desert using nothing but clever airflow and evaporative cooling. No electricity, no modern refrigerant, just extremely smart architecture solving a problem that seems impossible without it. You've probably heard that medieval Europeans used spices to mask the taste of rotten meat. It sounds believable. It is not true. Historian Paul Freedman, who has extensively studied the medieval spice trade, points out that spices were incredibly expensive, reserved almost exclusively for wealthy households, the exact households that had zero trouble affording fresh meat in the first place. Nobody was covering up spoiled meat with pepper that cost more than the meat itself. That would be like hiding a stain on your shirt with a diamond. So why does everyone believe this? Mostly because it's a fun story that sounds clever, doesn't make it true. Which brings us to the real question. If nobody had labs, how did this knowledge actually get passed down? The same way most survival knowledge spreads, painfully and socially. someone got sick. Someone else noticed the pattern. And that observation got repeated, generation after generation, until "don't eat meat that smells like that" became instinct instead of an active decision. This is sometimes called cultural transmission of disgust, and it means you didn't have to personally get food poisoning to learn the lesson. Your grandmother's grandmother's disgusted face did the teaching for you. Animals played a quiet role in this too. Long before written recipes existed, people paid attention to what their dogs refused to eat, what livestock avoided in a pasture, what insects swarmed toward versus away from. Nature was constantly leaving hints, and paying attention to those hints was, quite literally, a survival skill. Basically, humans built a distributed food safety network, one raised eyebrow at a time, centuries before anyone wrote a single food safety regulation. And when the system failed, and sometimes it absolutely did fail, it usually reinforced the lesson permanently for everyone who witnessed it. Look, if you've ever aggressively sniffed leftovers before committing to eating them, congratulations. You're running software that's been in continuous development for tens of thousands of years. Subscribe, because apparently we're both still figuring out if that yogurt is fine. So the next time you crack open something questionable from the back of your fridge and your face automatically twists before your brain even finishes the thought, that's not paranoia. That's an inheritance, passed down from every single ancestor who trusted their nose and lived long enough to pass down the habit.